Well, I finished inking another page, and I'm going to tell you about it.
This is illo time.
There's the first page, there's the last page. I'm kind of inking them out of order. But first page, I kind of introduce kind of the size deal. In the last page, you see some characters, see this whale, see the whale coming, okay? And then we kind of go back into, there's that shop, there's that fly again. So it's kind of like a callback. See, there's the pub, there's the fly and the glass and stuff, and so it's kind of a frame story where we start, and then we come back and we end over here. This panel is kind of a sort of a spoiler, so I'm gonna kind of finish inking it later. I also haven't like designed that character yet, so but these were fun to do. I'm gonna talk a little bit about Draugrs, which are these guys, because they're just fascinating. I just think they're super interesting. So let's talk about some Draugrs while we ink this thing. So I switched back to the Kuretake Red Barrel. I was using the Winsor Newton Series 7, but I don't know. I'm just much more comfortable with the brush pens than I am with an actual brush. I do like brushes for a number of reasons, but I think I'm going to experiment a little bit with it more kind of before I get to that point. But anyway, so Draugrs are Viking zombies, and they are kind of interesting because they do a bunch of different things, but they can control their weight, so they can kind of like increase in mass and crush, their enemies. They can drive people crazy. They can curse people to death with bad luck, so that they die of bad luck. They have the ability to shapeshift, not into anything that they want, but just a couple different things. And one of my favorite things about them, and you can kind of see this on this page, I'll show you again at the end of this video, is that they have seaweed or kelp heads in some of the legends. Not all of them, not all the mythology, but that was the one that I went with just because I think it's really funny. They're said to like drink blood and do different things like that. And a lot of it is because, and the way that they're created is kind of interesting. If a dead body is found sitting up or standing up instead of laying down, then it's assumed that they'll come back. And so what they do is, and especially if that person had a lot of like negative emotions or had a lot of, anyway, kind of the whole like unfinished business type things. But greed, or whatever. Sometimes they're like protecting a treasure or whatnot. Anyway, what they do to them to make sure that they don't come back is not try to stop them from being created as a Draugr, but is to make it so they can't walk. So what they'll do is they'll drive needles into their feet. They'll tie their big toes together. They'll brick up the entrance to their tomb. All kinds of kind of interesting stuff. So I'm going to show you kind of my Draugr designs here right now. Yeah, so Draugrs, like I said, they have like kind of super strength and stuff like that. But this is a Draugr. These two are Draugrs. This guy in the background is a werewolf. And then where are we? There we are. Here's another Draugr, kind of with the seaweed head and his harpoons and whatnot. And so those are kind of the two places. Since it's only a 4-page story, I do kind of a lot of montage style work. So I've got my mermaids and my siren, and there's some more mermaids. And anyway, this is the one I'll be inking next. But some other things about Draugrs that are kind of interesting is that the myth of them comes from people not quite understanding what happens to dead bodies when they're decaying and decomposing. So what's happening is, like, as the bodies bloat, they seem to change size, right? They seem to get bigger because they're bloating. Sometimes as the gums recede, they will bleed because they don't. I mean, back in the day, they didn't like drain the bodies and replace the fluid with anything, and so they'll bleed around the mouth, which made people think, oh, they're getting up at night and drinking blood. A lot of times, the corpses will make noise as gases escape, or sometimes maybe an animal would break into the tomb, and it would sound like rustling and things, and so like a lot of what the myth comes from. Oh, because they also have either blue or gray skin. And my comic isn't a color comic, but if it was, they'd be a cool bluish gray. But I mean, all these things are just people seeing corpses and not really understanding like what's happening and the weird noises that as gas escapes and things like that. And so it's just kind of interesting, like where a lot of the mythology comes from around these things. But yeah, so there's my Draugrs, and there's the that is the now why can't I remember the name of the? Oh yeah, I was going to tell you about that. The narwhal. I learned a little bit about the narwhal. It's super interesting. So the narwhal, that is not a horn. That is its left incisor, and so that's a tooth. That's why they call it a tusk. It's a tooth that, instead of growing down towards the opening of the mouth, grows out through their head. And so their left incisor tooth is what makes that tusk, and it's kind of spiral. And narwhals are actually responsible in a large part for the myth of unicorns, because in ancient Europe and whatnot, whalers would hunt narwhals and then sell the tusks as all kinds of magical properties, like aphrodisiac and all kinds of interesting things. And so they would go in and they would kind of sell it as unicorn tusks, because they're weird looking. They're spiral, kind of sharp, pointy, and they can be super long too. Anyway, kind of interesting stuff. So I'm enjoying kind of the mythology of this. I especially like my Mermaid Design, which they were originally, mermaids were not like sexy, playful, fun little creatures. They would like lure sailors to their death. They would sink ships. They were pretty vicious, or whatever. And I mean, I think most people today think that the mermaid myth is kind of based on like sailors seeing manatees and being like, hey, look, a woman with a fishtail or whatever. And anyway, kind of interesting. I don't know, but like I like to think of them as more of a like a vicious creature. And then I mixed it with a lot of like the kind of mythology that you have around the sea, the kind of curses and hoaxes and what is the word that I'm looking for? Superstition, right? Superstition around different things. The sailors are incredibly superstitious back in the day, and they believed in runes and magic and spells and witches and luck and things like that. And so, like in Moby Dick, one of the reasons that he's playing with a coin here is in Moby Dick, Ahab takes a gold doubloon and nails it to the mast, and says, whoever spots Moby Dick, gets this doubloon. And then at the end, they catch a hawk and they nail the hawk to the mast as well. And so when the Pequod, which is the ship, sinks, it's kind of like, you know, this innocent kind of angel-like creature, the bird, you know, is buried because of greed and avarice and kind of chasing, you know, your hatred and whatever. And even you know, which is where the title comes. I haven't written the title out, but the title is From Hell's Heart, which is what Ahab says right before he dies. He had a prophecy from a witch, I think, tell him that only hemp would kill him. And so he felt like he was safe because, you know, whatever. But what happened is he said, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was basically from hell's heart I stab at thee, as he threw his harpoon into Moby Dick. And there was some problem with the line that was attached to the harpoon. And so as he reached down to kind of fix it, as it was flying, it wrapped around him, and then Moby Dick dragged him down and destroyed everything except for Ishmael. And so, anyway, lots of fun things. I'll talk a little bit more about the Pequod when I'm inking this page, because the Pequod is super interesting, the ship that they were in. So, anyway, I hope you guys like that. I don't know. It's kind of fun to talk about some of the stuff that I'm working on. So, page 2 of 4 done on this thing. Gonna get started on my sticker stint soon. And what is that? 2 days. 2 days that'll start. So, those of you that are jumping in with me, I'm excited. Let's do it. Check my stuff out at CoryKerr.com. I'm out.
This is illo time.